In 1974, the city of Los Angeles passed a new building code. Every new high-rise in the city would be required to have an automatic sprinkler system. Every existing high-rise was exempt. The First Interstate Tower had opened just 1 year earlier. It was 62 stories and 858 feet tall, the tallest building in the city. It was grandfathered in. For the next 14 years, the city of Los Angeles would watch one downtown high-rise burn after another, refuse to extend the sprinkler requirement to existing buildings, and quietly wait for someone to die. On May 4th, 1988, someone finally did. Downtown Los Angeles in the early 1970s was in the middle of a building boom. The skyline was filling out with new high-rise towers. In 1973, the United California Bank building opened at 707 Wilshire Boulevard. 62 stories of bronze-clad steel and glass, designed by a major Los Angeles architecture firm called Charles Luckman Associates. Built jointly by United California Bank and a major American insurance company, the Equitable Life Assurance Society of the United States. At the moment it opened, this Los Angeles skyscraper was the tallest building west of the Mississippi River. It would hold that title for almost a decade. By 1988, after corporate banking mergers had consolidated the name, the building was known as the First Interstate Tower. Total losses from the fire that would erupt inside this Los Angeles bank headquarters, including business interruption across the bank's operations, would eventually run past $200 million in 1988 dollars. In today's money, that's roughly $566 million. The active fire suppression system that would have prevented every dollar of it cost $3.5 million to install. Same 62 floors of downtown Los Angeles office space, same 1.2 million square feet, same structural steel frame coated in spray-applied fireproofing, and the same critical absence at the heart of the design. The building had no automatic fire sprinklers, not because of an engineering oversight, not because of a contractor error, because the City of Los Angeles building code didn't require them. 1 year after the tower opened, the Los Angeles City Council amended the building code. Every new high-rise built in the city from that point forward would be required to install an automatic sprinkler system covering the entire building. The decision came after years of pressure from fire engineering professionals who had been watching corporate office towers burn across the country and warning that Los Angeles was going to be next. The new code was a victory for fire safety, with one specific carve-out. The new requirement applied only to future construction. Every existing high-rise in the city was exempt, including the brand new First Interstate Tower, which had been occupied for less than 12 months. There is a technical name for this kind of provision in a building code. It is called a grandfather clause. It means the law treats older buildings as if they should be permitted to keep doing things the old way, even when the city has officially decided the old way is not safe. Grandfathering existing high-rises was, on paper, a question of fairness. It would be expensive to retrofit existing skyscrapers with sprinkler systems. Property owners had not budgeted for it. The change in the rules came after they had already made their investment. In reality, what it meant was that the City of Los Angeles had identified a known hazard, written a law to fix that hazard in new buildings, and then explicitly chosen to leave the existing hazard in place. The building code update was less a fire safety reform than a deferred maintenance plan with no completion date. The clock started running in 1974. It would run for 14 years. The first warning came 2 years later. In November of 1976, fire broke out at another downtown Los Angeles high-rise, a 32-story tower called the Aon Center. The damage came to $3.6 million in 1976 money. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $21 million today. The building was renovated after the fire. The owners had to replace charred interiors, replace damaged building systems, rebuild burned-out floors. And while the building was opened up for renovation, with construction crews already on site and most tenants displaced, neither the owners nor the city saw the need to add a sprinkler system. The fire had already happened. The hazard had already been demonstrated. The cost would have been incremental on top of repair work that was already underway. Nobody installed sprinklers. The City of Los Angeles watching one of its own downtown high-rises burn, did not move to extend the sprinkler requirement to existing buildings. The grandfather clause held. The Occidental fire entered the record as a near miss that didn't change anything. 12 years before the First Interstate fire, the city of Los Angeles had been handed a fire on roughly the same kind of building, in roughly the same neighborhood, with no fatalities and a manageable bill. It was the kind of warning that, in a different city or a different era, would have triggered a code change. In Los Angeles in 1976, it triggered insurance claims. The next warning would come from out of state, and the lesson learned would not be about sprinklers. It'd be about how to keep a bank running while it burned. On Thanksgiving Day of 1982, fire broke out inside another major American bank tower, the Northwestern National Bank building in downtown Minneapolis. The structural damage was significant, but what made the Minneapolis fire famous in corporate banking circles wasn't the damage to the bank building itself, it was the business interruption. The bank lost roughly $50 million in business activity from the disruption. In today's dollars, that's about $166 million. For First Interstate Bank, which had its corporate headquarters in a much taller and more expensive Los Angeles tower with no sprinklers and no retrofit plan, the Minneapolis fire was a clear signal. The response was immediate. Within a few years, First Interstate had developed and implemented a corporate disaster plan covering its Los Angeles headquarters. The plan cost roughly $1.5 million. It was designed to keep the bank operationally functional in the event of a major incident at the tower. It included backup data sites, an emergency command structure, and continuity protocols for critical banking functions. The plan had been completed approximately 18 months before the fire. First Interstate had even run a full drill of the plan less than a month before May 4th, 1988. The disaster plan would, in fact, work exactly as designed. What the disaster plan didn't include was sprinklers. The bank had assessed the risk of a major fire in its 62-story Los Angeles headquarters. It had concluded the risk was real enough to justify a $1.5 million business continuity investment, and it had separately decided not to spend $3.5 million on the active fire suppression system that would have prevented the fire from being catastrophic in the first place. The math was completely backward. Worse, the sprinklers were, in fact, eventually going to be installed. By 1987, the retrofit was finally underway. The installation would be approximately 90% complete on the night of May 4th, 1988, 2 months from commissioning. On the night of the fire, the sprinkler contractor working inside the First Interstate Tower shut down the building's 2 fire pumps. To make connections in the partially installed sprinkler network, the installation crew needed to drain the standpipe. The pumps went off. The water flow alarms, which would have automatically signaled the fire department if water started moving through the system, went dead. The building's active fire suppression infrastructure was now offline. Investigators would later conclude the fire had probably started in electrical equipment at one of the computer workstations on the 12th floor trading area. The exact ignition source was never identified. A smoke detector activated on the 12th floor. The signal traveled to the building security desk in the main lobby. Building security, watching alarm panels that had been triggering false positives all evening because of the sprinkler installation work, silenced the alarm. More smoke detectors went off on the 12th floor. Security silenced them. More went off after that. Security silenced them again. Then smoke detectors all over the tower started lighting up the security panel on multiple floors above the fire, climbing upward toward the 30th story of the building. The system was telling building security that the fire wasn't contained to one floor anymore. It was spreading. And the building did not call the fire department. Instead, building personnel sent a 24-year-old maintenance engineer named Alexander Handy up alone in a service elevator to investigate. While Handy was riding up, people in other buildings around downtown Los Angeles were already calling 911. They could see flames pouring out of the 12th floor from the street. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. Misbuilt covers the engineering, regulatory, and institutional failures behind America's most catastrophic megaprojects, one disaster at a time. New episode every week. By the time the Los Angeles Fire Department arrived on scene, Alexander Handy was already dead. The service elevator he'd been sent up in had opened onto the 12th floor lobby. The lobby was fully involved with fire. The temperature inside the burning floors that night would later be estimated at over 2,000 degrees, fueled by synthetic office furnishings, computer equipment, and the standard contents of a late 20th century corporate office floor. Handy had nowhere to go. A fire door he'd reached was blocked. Firefighters would later find his body in a service elevator on the 12th floor of the building. He was 24 years old. He was an Air Force veteran. He was a native of the San Fernando Valley in the Los Angeles area. He was married with a 2-year-old daughter waiting for him at home that night. Building personnel had sent him up alone because they thought the smoke alarm was probably another false positive. They thought, wrong. There's no version of the story where Alexander Handy needed to die. The sprinklers existed. They were 90% installed. They would have triggered on the 12th floor and contained the fire before it grew enough to fully involve an elevator lobby. The smoke detectors had been working all evening, repeatedly. Each alarm had been a chance to call the fire department. Each silencing was a decision made by a person watching a panel of warning lights in the lobby of the building. By the time the warning panel was lit up across nearly 20 separate floors of the tower, the building still hadn't called. They sent the 24-year-old up instead. The Los Angeles Fire Department's response to the First Interstate fire was the largest mobilization in the department's history for a single incident. 383 firefighters responded, drawn from 64 companies and 4 helicopters. Roughly 40% of the city's on-duty fire force was tied up at the burning bank tower on Wilshire Boulevard. Fire attack teams worked their way up 4 separate stairwells, hauling 10,000 feet of hose into a downtown Los Angeles high-rise. Crews flowed 500,000 gallons of water across 3 hours and 39 minutes of continuous fighting. Helicopter crews lifted 8 people off the roof of the burning building, including the building's own maintenance engineer, who had been trapped on an upper floor when the fire began. He had been the one to shut down the fire pumps for the sprinkler contractor earlier that evening. Now, he was being airlifted off his own building. One Los Angeles Fire Department officer told reporters that night, quote, "I was not sure we could hold it," end quote. The fire was eventually declared under control in the early morning hours. 5 floors of the tower had been destroyed. Floors 12 through 16 were burned out across roughly their full perimeter. The structure held together for one specific reason. The building's steel frame had been protected during original construction with spray-applied fireproofing on every structural member. Even with the active sprinkler system offline, the passive fire protection on the structural steel kept the floors from collapsing long enough for crews to mount an interior attack. The Los Angeles fire engineers who had designed the building had given the fire department time to save it, and the fire department barely had enough time. By the time the smoke cleared, the contemporaneous damage estimate to the structure was $40 to $50 million in 1988 money. Including business interruption losses across the bank's headquarters operations, total losses ran well over $200 million in 1988 dollars, somewhere north of $566 million today. The sprinkler system that would have prevented the fire from ever escaping the 12th floor had cost $3.5 million to install. In today's money, that is about $10 million. Set those numbers side by side. $10 million in preventive infrastructure to avoid more than $500 million in total damages, plus 1 death and 40 injuries. The owners had spent more on the corporate disaster recovery plan than they ever would have spent on the sprinkler system that prevented needing one. The Los Angeles District Attorney charged First Interstate Bank and 8 other companies, including contractors, the sprinkler installation firm, and the building's security company, with labor and safety code violations. Every charge was a misdemeanor. Every charge was dismissed by the court. First Interstate eventually settled with Alexander Handy's widow and children for a reported $6.5 million. For everyone except the Handy family, the legal consequences of the fire were essentially zero. The bank rebuilt. The contractors moved on. The security firm kept its license. 3.5 months after the fire, in August of 1988, the Los Angeles City Council finally passed a new high-rise retrofit ordinance. Every commercial high-rise in the city built before the original 1974 code change would now be required to retrofit automatic sprinklers. A follow-up ordinance the next year extended the requirements further. The grandfather clause was finally closed for commercial buildings in Los Angeles. The Occidental Center fire of 1976 had not done it. A deadly residential high-rise fire in Los Angeles in 1982, which killed 24 people, had not done it for commercial buildings. It took Alexander Handy. And even then, the city of Los Angeles left a gap. Residential high-rises in Los Angeles built between the early 1940s and the original 1974 code change are still not required to have automatic sprinklers today. Los Angeles City Council members raised the question again as recently as 2017. The issue remains unresolved. The First Interstate Tower itself was rebuilt. The sprinkler installation was completed within months of the fire. The building reopened in September of 1988, fully sprinklered with 700 new smoke detectors installed throughout the tower. It is now known as the Aon Center. It still stands at 707 Wilshire Boulevard in downtown Los Angeles. It is now the third tallest building in the city. Anyone walking past it today would have no way of knowing what happened inside on the night of May 4th, 1988. That a 24-year-old maintenance engineer was sent into an elevator he never came out of. That a downtown Los Angeles high-rise burned for 4 hours because nobody inside the building called the fire department until it was too late. That the city had been warned repeatedly and chose every time not to act. The grandfather clause closed in August of 1988. Alexander Handy was buried a few weeks earlier.